Welcome to episode 112 of the 100% podcast with me, your host, Harry Purdy. Today, I'm joined by somebody who has had a massive impact on my life from when I was a very small person, and he has gone on to do very special things. He is the creator of Core Cultures. He's an online content creator and online big personality, Mr. Adam Barker. How you doing, bro?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very, very good. That was a nice introduction.
Oh,
That
you're
was a
very
nice
welcome, man.
introduction.
You're very welcome. We'll talk about the my first memories of you very shortly.
Oh dear.
Core cultures, though, mate. Where did that come from?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the name originally, actually, it's hilarious. It's quite a funny story. I had a notebook, not a notebook, a note on my phone that was just so long, and it was core something, core this, core that, and it was before I started traveling. So when I booked my tickets to go traveling to Bangkok, I knew I wanted to just take pictures of basically everywhere that I'd seen and just throw it on Instagram. But I wanted to give it like a brand name rather than just Adam Barker taking pictures. Kind of wanted to give it a brand name. And yeah, I think I was like core conclusions, core shock, core like it was all to do like I wanted it to be around culture and the things that you see along traveling Southeast Asia. And that's when it just clicked core. And then I was like, what about just cultures? That's what I want to go and find out about, new cultures and different experiences across Southeast Asia. So yeah, core cultures, and it just clicked, and it's stayed with me ever since. Like 6 years I've had that name behind me. It's weird. The parts of me kind of want to let it go, but it's really difficult to let it go.
For
Like it's
sure,
something
man.
that's been there for so long now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It
Hey.
was like the link for myself with Grassroots Guy, right? It was the OG. The
Mhm.
OG always wants to stick, but sometimes if you're in a place where you need to let the name go and
I know.
rebrand, maybe it's time.
I think we're getting there. I might be turning it into more of a personal brand, just literally going by my name. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I think all of the business gurus in the world would say definitely do it via your name, because then
Yeah,
anything you want to turn it into, you can use the same name, but just add on like whatever
exactly.
whatever it is. It might be Adam Barker Foods, let's just say Adam Barker
Uh-huh.
Travels. You can do
Yeah,
anything with it, can't you?
exactly. And do you know what the biggest problem that I'm having with the name Core Cultures is when I'm filming, if I'm out filming content for the day and I meet people and they'll ask me what is my channel name. And obviously I'm in Indonesia making this content. So Core Cultures doesn't really, it rolls off the tongue to us really nicely, but for them it's like cool. They think it's cool, and
Yeah,
then they don't get the word cultures all the time, so I have to write it out for them, and I'm like, my name is so easy, Adam Barker.
yeah,
Like it's
man.
just so easy, and I'm like, maybe I need to change this so that it will catch on better,
I
you know.
think I think on that lesson alone, I'd be like, yeah, maybe it is time.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, I
It's
threw
hard to
you.
let go.
Yeah, I threw you into the deep end with a question that I didn't even know the answer to, right, until today. And I've known you a long time, but you find yourself
Uh-huh.
sat on the 100% podcast, mate. How does that feel?
I'm happy to be here. I've watched I haven't admittedly not watched or listened to all of your 100% podcasts, but when I do get a minute, I stop in, man. And I honestly, the conversations that you have and the people that you've had here are really, it's just a really good listen, actually, the questions that you ask. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that I've managed to get myself to a place where I want to be here. Because talking openly and freely, we'd planned to do this sooner, but admittedly I had to hold my hands up and was like, I'm just not in the right place at the moment. I tripped over my own feet a little bit, but I was getting there, but I just didn't feel like I was in the right place. So I feel really good to be here right now, knowing that I'm in a good place. I've done the right things in order to be here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. And for me, it makes perfect sense, right? Because the idea around having guests on the podcast is for me to speak to people who have got different stories, and but also in some element of their life have given 100% in some way. And for you,
Mhm.
mate, like from my perspective, dropping the English lifestyle to go and do what you do after
Yeah.
like some really really sad events in your life, which obviously we'll talk about as well today, and going
Yeah.
away and basically starting afresh in some ways to follow your dreams is
Mhm.
massive. And I think it's going to be an important listen for the people who do listen to the episode today.
That's good. I appreciate that. It's been a roller coaster since I left the UK. It's not all. In Instagram, everyone always says like I actually had a message last week. Someone was like, "Your life looks amazing," and I was like, "I know it looks that way, but trust me, I have just the same struggles as everyone else. Some
Oh
days
my God.
I feel just the same as you do. You know, but Instagram, obviously, that's what Instagram is. That is what social media is. You put your best parts there, and
I
everything else you kind of keep
I
for
completely
yourself.
agree. I actually had somebody drop in, and we were catching up the other day in my messages, and they were like, "You look like you're smashing it." I was like, "Don't remember, you only see what I do on Instagram." Like,
Yeah.
because I think it's really important, especially with the line of work that I'm in, where it's around like physical and mental health and trying to help people. Like, as much as comparison against other people can be a motivator sometimes, and it can be something that inspires you to go and do that, which
Mhm.
it has for me with certain content creators and fitness professionals. On the flip side, we've all been in those situations where you do look at that person's life and you go, "How the fuck are you doing that?" Or like,
Facts.
you
Facts,
know.
mate.
So I think it's important to just say, hold on, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, you literally see, if you, like, let's just say I take a photo, right, and post some content or a 15-second video, and the same for you, like a reel, that's 90 seconds of your day. They don't
Uh-huh.
see they don't see the stuff, the hard work. Like, I'd obviously know you very well because I've worked with you for like closely for the last, well, 2/3 of the year, but you're
Yeah,
sat editing content
all the time.
all the time. Yeah.
All the time. All the time. If I'm not at the gym or walking my dog or out filming, I'm editing. That's literally all I do. And I put up these 15-minute videos, and people don't realize that's taken like 2 or 3 days to make it as perfect as I can get it to
Yeah.
upload 15 minutes worth of content. But like that's not a grumble. That's just reality. That is how it is. That's what I've chosen to do. I enjoy doing it, but sometimes it's like, oh man, I need an editor to take on some of the load here. But we'll get to that. That's the future kind of planning ahead. I'm just not there yet.
100%, man.
You know.
So that's one thing I would speak to you about today is like with your content. I love it, mate. I think it looks incredible.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased because obviously we are such good mates, but I genuinely, what's impressive about it is it's all self-taught, right?
Yeah. 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 I mean, technically, I did when I was at college. I did media studies, but that was college. I mean, I'm 34 now, so anything that I learned back then is completely irrelevant to what I'm doing now because every software changed, every camera changed, everything changed, apart from the fundamentals and the basics of creating a story or something that you want people to stay engaged with. So, but I literally had to relearn, you know, the the whole editing side of things this year. I've never used Premiere Pro until this year in my life, and it's been nice though. It's been a gradual. Every single video is getting better and better every single time I put something out or I learn something new. Um, so yeah, it kind of is all self-taught in a way, and especially with like the reels. But that's why the internet is amazing. Like I can Google anything or YouTube anything, and you'll find answers. You just gotta really bother to look for it.
In respect to it, for somebody afresh, let's just say, let's just use me for example, right? I want to upgrade the way my reels look, or want to upgrade the way my podcast clips look. Premiere Pro can be quite daunting, right? But is it just a
Mhm.
case of keep going, keep practicing, like everything?
Absolutely. And anything, like I said, anything that you need to know is on YouTube. So I probably know probably 30% of what you can actually do with Premiere Pro. You know what I mean? And to create clean like social media reels and stuff like that, you don't even really need Premiere Pro these days. For me, I use it because I'm out traveling. There's a lot of different types of content and stuff like that. But in regards to what you're filming, very much in an office setting or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in a casual setting like this, you don't have to think too much about too many different camera angles. So you could use maybe a much simpler software in order to edit them together. It's more about the equipment that you use. So if you just make sure that you're filming in like a high resolution with 25 frames per second so that it looks as realistic as possible. So like movies shoot in 24, 25 frames per second, but most phones are filming in like 60 frames
yeah.
per second, which is why it always looks so smooth. But I always film in 25 frames per second, 4K. And that's the reason it looks so crisp. And people are always saying, like, what camera are you using? And I'm like, it's just a Sony ZV-E10. It didn't cost me more than £700, but yeah, it's just about using the right things in order to get that final result. So it's not so much about having to learn Premiere Pro. There's so many different softwares and stuff out there that you could pick up a lot quicker than Premiere Pro. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
amazing, man. So what's the dream with core cultures? Because we see the content you release, and I've said to you it looks class, and I know like many people who I've shown what you do are like, wow, that's like pretty impressive stuff. But for you, obviously, you're filming all sorts of crazy shit in Bali.
Yeah.
What's the goal? What's the dream?
The goal, the dream is so essentially I first started filming because, like I said, core culture started as photography. I was just taking pictures, but over time the evolution of content has changed as well. Everything is video based these days. Obviously there's still photographers that post their photography, but everything is video based. And I was like watching a lot of YouTube, and I was seeing a lot of creators out there that were kind of just raw filming, no edits, just uploading it straight away. And people were loving it and being like, oh, they're actually seeing like this side of Bali or Indonesia that not many people show. So if I type in like Bali, it will just be like beach clubs, or it'd be Canggu or Lawatu. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I'm not throwing shade at that. But there's not enough about like smaller hidden areas that people don't go to, that the tourists don't get told to go to. So my goal was to show much more of Bali in a very authentic light. That's why I started learning the language, because if you go to the smaller areas, you can't communicate in English. If you're in a tourist area, anyone in the restaurant, they'll all learn English, so they would speak English. But sometimes I've been in villages where there's been no English whatsoever. They're even speaking Bahasa Bali instead of Bahasa Indonesia as well. And I'm like, okay, now I'm really lost. So there's so many different dialects. But that was originally the first goal, was to show basically more than just the tourist areas or Canggu or beach clubs, which Canggu has obviously become very, very popular for. Bali, sorry, has become very popular for. But the long-term goal is to monetize it almost as a brand, so that I can do sponsorships and make money from the content that I create, and use, eventually make enough money that I can use a good chunk of that in order to support the people that are in need the most here. You know, I've been to villages where they don't even have rice for a month, let alone, you know, the protein and vegetables and just basic things that you need on a day-to-day basis. There's people really struggling here, and you don't see that. You don't see that in the brochures. You don't see that on Instagram, because people don't show it, they hide it. Whereas what I want to do is try to get to a point where doing what I enjoy the most, which is interacting with people, filming it, editing it, creating a story out of it, and then making enough money out of that as well to obviously support myself to continue, but also to be able to support the people that need it the most, build schools, you know, feed families in villages that haven't got work at the moment, and etc. So that is the big dream, is to be able to create something where, you know, a chunk of my income will go straight back out to the people.
I love
That's
it,
the
mate.
goal.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. So, with respect to Bali, what is it about Bali that has made you fall in love with it so much?
So much. Where do I start? I mean, number one, you can't deny that the weather is good.
Yeah,
The weather is good.
yeah.
I mean, rainy season sucks. It does flood, but you know, a good 80% of the time, the weather's really, really good. The food's good. But what's most interesting here is the diversity in culture as well. So Bali is mainly Hindu, but it's not even Hindu like Indian Hindu. It's Balinese Hindu. It's its own culture, its own version almost of Hinduism. And it's so interesting. You know, growing up, I wasn't religious, and I didn't really knock religion, but I was just ignorant to learn about it. I was like, I don't want to hear about this. But when I started traveling, I started obviously reading more into the places that I was going to, and it just became interesting. So in order to explain this better, actually, I need to tell you where I was before. I was in Thailand, which was really nice. I stayed in Thailand, but we were in the north and there was no beaches nearby. And I was like, I wish I could just go to a beach really quickly. But then I also like the mountains, and then I also like waterfalls. And I was like, what place on earth has literally waterfalls, a volcano that you can climb, a beach, beautiful beaches, like all within, you know, 2 hours of each other? And Bali was the answer. And I came here, the people, man, like some of the best people, not some of, actually just facts, the best people I've ever met. The hospitality that I've received here. I'll literally say good morning to someone walking through a village, and they'll invite you in their home for a coffee, and like you don't even know this person. And it's just like that kind of hospitality. It's just beautiful. It's they have the values that they live by here is it's done in three sections. So it's about nature's it's about nature, the people that you live with, and what was the third one? Your connection to each other. So your connection to nature, your connection to God, and your connection to each other. And obviously, I don't believe in God, but seeing the way that they actually treat their life by those three values just makes them very, very good people. You know, obviously there's bad people everywhere, but the majority just incredibly kind and welcoming people. So yeah, that's kind of what made me fall in love with the place. The people more than anything, I think.
Yeah, insane. And do you think that kind of value-based living is something that gets a little bit lost in Western culture, like from being
Yeah,
somebody who spent most of your life in the UK? Do you think that
yeah,
that gets lost a little bit?
absolutely. And it's not something that I throw shade at the Western world about because it's completely understandable. There's something that I've learned over time is that the way that we are in, you know, a later age after you're 21 or whatever like that, the way that you think, the things that you might moan about, the things that you might be unhappy with is all dependent on the upbringing that you had. So we get used to things. We get used to having Wi-Fi all the time. We get used to having a roof that doesn't leak. So of course, when that roof leaks, we're going to moan about it. The Wi-Fi goes down, we're going to moan about it. So I I have noticed that people here don't moan about things as much because they've grown up with different values. You know, like I said, I've been to places where they live in. I mean, I've seen people living in places that we would call a shed. You know, but they're happy. And I turn up and they're like, "Do you want a coconut? I've got coconuts." Like, and they don't have anything, but they'll give you anything that they do have. Like, I've got a coconut tree. Do you
Yes.
want a coconut? Come in, sit down, and stuff like that. So yeah, to compare it with the Western world is, yeah, you're right. Those kinds of values of caring more for each other in a way seems lost. But it is still there. It's just at the back of the mind because everyone's so busy with this and that. And what's it called? Keeping up with the Joneses, you know?
Yeah,
Like so and
yeah,
so's got
man. What?
my neighbor's got a new Mercedes. I got to go and get a new Mercedes. No, you don't. You don't have to do that. But that's just the way that we've evolved and the way that we think. And it's no one's fault that we've grown up that way. It's just the way it is. Whereas the values obviously are very different here. They value things much, much differently in that respect.
Such wisdom, Adam Barker.
Yeah.
I think I actually posted a quote on this the other day and I heard it from another podcast, but I was like, wow, that is so deep, true, and meaningful. And the quote was, there's a guy called Naval something, and he's known for his deep philosophical, almost stoic quotes. And it was, if you can't be happy with a cup of coffee, you won't be happy with your super yacht. And I think,
It's facts.
yeah, I think
Facts.
it's so true, and I think it's so important. And as difficult it is as it is, especially in the Western world, to be or to find contentness, because the way the media works, the way that you get advertisements chucked in your face, they are
Mhm.
always pushing you to want the next thing, that want the next new snazzy pair of trainers, to want
Yeah.
the next new fridge freezer from Curry's on buy like
Yes.
yeah, buy now, pay later or whatever. But
Facts.
actually, if you can't sit there in your in your house and or in the coffee shop with that cappuccino that you've paid £3 something for and go, do you know what? Like I'm
Content.
content,
Yeah.
then life can become quite difficult. And I think that's a lesson that I learned. Do you know what? I've never labeled myself as materialistic, and materialistic can have very different like angles off of it, right? Like
Uh-huh.
what is your poison? I guess mine would be going and watching football, maybe. I don't know. Like, yeah.
I wouldn't say that's materialistic then. Materialistic for me, I would take the word materialistic as a definition of kind of always wanting more than you actually need
Yeah.
and not being happy unless you have it. And that's a problem, you know, like because like you've just said, if you can't just be content with what you do have and you're constantly chasing things, you're just going to be stressed all the time. And when you do finally get it, you realize it's probably not as
Not
worth it
even
as you
worth it.
build it up to be in your head. Like you go and get that Mercedes, but then fuel's expensive. You've
I mean,
always got something new to moan about.
yeah. Who's the basically there are many examples of celebrities with ridiculous amounts of money that have gone on to do stupid shit, broke the law in some
Yeah,
horrendous way,
yeah,
or I don't know, they just make themselves look like a fool. And I think
uh-huh,
that's because all of that materialistic stuff they've ticked off the list. They've done
yeah,
the they've done the travel, they've bought the Lamborghini, they've I don't know, done fucking DMT on the top of the Himalayas, like, and they're like, shit, what next? I know, I'll be a twat. Like,
facts.
and all of that inner. like chimp. They just can't control it because they've listened
Hunger,
to it.
hunger for
Yeah,
something else.
yeah,
Something else. It's like it's like people get bored and are still looking for something to chase. And it's like, what is it? What's the word? Dopamine hits. Like, so people
yeah, yeah,
buy things, or like, I mean, prime example, before I finally sorted my big problem with junk food out was I had to have that bag of crisps, otherwise I wasn't happy. And I guess it's the same thing, I guess, when you're constantly chasing materialistic things, or you're kind of obsessed with money and what it can buy. You're always looking for something new. And I guess it could just become less exciting by the end of it. That you could literally buy a Bugatti and be like, yeah, cool, got a Bugatti. Do you know what I mean? It
yeah.
becomes less exciting. So you're always chasing something more for that next dopamine hit. Let's go get wasted and do something stupid, end up in the paper.
Yeah, I wonder how
Right.
many times you've like Tiger Woods is the best example ever, right? Like for
Uh-huh.
somebody who
Right.
is at the absolute top of anything
Uh-huh.
financially, like so sound, he could have probably bought EA by the time he like when he was winning all those Masters and stuff, and then he did what he did, got obviously blind wasted, drunk drive down the street chasing his wife, and that was that, and then his image is tarnished a little bit, isn't it? And it's incredible, really. It is
It's almost a
incredible what
shame.
what it can do. I wonder how many times, this was my question, that you buy your Bugatti Veyron brand new, whatever color is your favorite. You've got all of the interiors. You've maybe even inserted a mini fridge on the inside of this car, right? Like, I wonder how many times you get in it and you go, "Fuck, I've got a Bugatti Veyron," before you go, "I'm getting in the car."
Well,
You,
yeah, before you think nothing of it. Yeah,
yeah, I'm just getting in the car.
quite quickly, I imagine.
I
Probably
reckon it
after a
would be.
week.
Yeah. Is it like is it is it called a something creep? Maybe a concept creep, or where like the normality of that concept just becomes
I
overridingly
haven't heard of
normal.
that before,
Yeah.
but I know what
Maybe
you
maybe
mean.
I've
I
got
know
the
what you
wrong
mean.
meeting, but it slowly creeps on you like that new normal. Like I know I don't really want to talk about it, but like COVID, right? Lockdown. Like that for some people, if you say to some people, did you like would you do it again? They go, "Yeah, I loved it." And you're like,
Yeah,
what the fuck? Like,
yeah,
because
for sure.
it suited their way of life, suited their personality, and that became their new normal. Working from home, not doing anything, being able to stay in their pajamas every day, like and watching
Yeah,
6 hours of Netflix. That concept of working from home, not going out the house, or if you did one time a day, became normal. And for some people, it's a bit like Stockholm syndrome, right?
yeah, yeah.
Eventually you're liking the people who are in charge of you. Like I don't know, man.
Uh-huh.
Weird,
No, I
weird.
get you.
What
No, no,
what a tangent.
no. I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It does suit things like, yeah, COVID. I mean, that happened, but again, that was different for me as well because we didn't have quite the same restrictions as you did over in Bali. So actually, as much as it sucked for the local people here who were working in the tourism industry, for those of us that were still here throughout the pandemic without tourists, it was lovely. Like I went to places that there would usually be 100, 200 people and it was no one, like no one else there whatsoever, and you're like, I'm never going to get this opportunity again. So actually COVID for me was quite nice. Quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. I think I've got a question. I've had this question wrote down to ask somebody, and I think that it's really relevant to ask you. And it's a very probing question. So I'm in this idea at the moment, mate, where everybody has probably like at least 8 versions of themselves through their life. And obviously, I've known you since I was 16 and just started working at Asda. And Adam Barker,
Yeah, yeah,
then, as much as some of your personalities remain the same, you're very different to when you were
yeah.
then. How many versions of Adam Barker do you think you've gone through in your life?
Already, how many have I gone through? Trying to think about this now because that's interesting because you're so right. So often I still think back sometimes and I'm like, wow, I'm just not that person anymore. So probably I'd probably say I'm like on the fifth version of myself,
Fifth,
maybe
yeah,
already.
at
I
34.
think so.
So on
Yeah,
average, then every 7 years, you're, I guess, like from a child up until 16, maybe it doesn't count. I don't know. So we'll go
because
from
you're malleable.
16.
You're just
Yeah,
sucking everything
you're just
in, I
learning,
guess.
aren't you? Which I think, well, I say you're just learning. I think you're just learning
Exactly.
every day of life anyway, in some form. whether it be bad lessons, good lessons,
Facts.
lessons that you need to learn, or whatever. But yeah, you reckon seven. Tell us about those versions.
Oh, I reckon five. Five.
Five.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, like you said, the first one is probably up until like 16 when you're just picking things up. I was a little git, to be honest. I was a little git. Not like so much a troublemaker, but I was a clown.
Yeah.
I was a clown. And I really flourished into that at 16. I remember becoming the class clown when I kind of hit 16. And I enjoyed the attention. And I don't know why. I'd ask my mum the same thing, how was I when I was a kid? And I was always in the middle of the room doing some stupid dance, stupid singing. I was always kind of looking for that attention. I think I feed off of other people's energy. And when I kind of got to that age 16, I guess, which would be number two, up until 16, like you said, yeah, you're malleable, you're learning, you're picking things up. But once I hit 16, I turned into that class clown, made jokes, potentially kind of took the mickey out of people a little bit. But the reason being is because I spent every day of my life getting the mickey taken out of me because I'm like, what? So short. I was the shortest guy all the time. I was always the shortest guy. So my natural response to that would be to use that then on other people and put that out there. But then I guess between 16 and 21, definitely changed again. Once you hit 21, you can drink. You got to remember as well, between 16 and 21, I was skateboarding like every day as well. So the people that I was around were very different as well. Good people, all great people. And then 21 happens and drink happens and you start drinking because you're in Yeovil and there's nothing else to do on a Friday night. So you're drinking a lot. But I went through a stage, and I'm not afraid to say it. I'm sure my mum already is aware, but I went through a drug stage. I went through a stage of trying out drugs, and I'm not afraid to say it because I don't necessarily regret it. There's certain things that maybe I shouldn't have tried, but I definitely don't regret it because again, I learned from it. I absolutely learned from it, and now I know that in my future self, if I have a son that is ever curious, I have all this experience behind me where I can talk to them, efficiently about it as well and effectively. So yeah, I kind of went through that stage where I stopped skateboarding and kind of didn't change so much as a person, but my habits changed. My habits definitely changed. That's when I started drinking a lot and just being experimental. And then up until 27, that's when I decided to leave. 27 is when I left the UK.
Wow, mate.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's when I really, really, really started to evolve as a person. I started to experience other cultures. I remember when I first landed in Thailand, my first impression was, what the fuck? But within, honestly, because it's so different, but within, a month or so of being in Southeast Asia, you started enjoying it, not being like what the fuck, but being like, oh shit, instead, like that's cool. And yeah, you start being more open-minded to religion and certain cultures and beliefs and stuff like that. And it's not so much that I agree or not agree because I try not to disagree with anything. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is how I've evolved as a person is I try not to debate what someone believes because at the end of the day, we all have different upbringings. So it's all generational. If someone here is Muslim and they've lived as Muslim since they were a kid and they've had that in their family their whole life, who am I to turn around and say, yeah, but I think you're wrong? Because to them, they're not wrong, right? But then the other way around, roles are reversed. I grew up, my parents never made me go to church. I never learned about Christianity or anything like that. So then no one can then also tell me like, well, you're wrong. Because at the end of the day, we all have different beliefs. Yeah, there might be a higher power, but that is 100% where I evolved so much and became very much just less judgmental. I used to judge people and take the mick out of people. Judge on a slight manner, but take the mick. Whereas now, yeah, I just want people to be happy. As long as the
Mate,
people around me are happy, whether they're strangers or friends, like I think that's like the most important thing. And if I can put a smile on someone's face at the end of the day, then I feel better for it too.
love it, man. I love it. I think it's important because I was speaking about this with Rob, who came on to do his 10th episode with me the other day. Big shout out, Rob McGeary. And we were talking about all of the different tangents of like politics, religion, and all those kind of things. And it's definitely something like, who's to say that anybody's actually wrong? Because
Exactly.
at the end of the day, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, they are all opinions, and all of those religions and political beliefs bring out different opinions. which
Yeah.
some people may, like you've just said, be brought up to be this is right and wrong, and that's the end of it, like in a
Yeah.
very strict way as well. So
Yeah.
who are we to say, or who is anybody to say that that's wrong? And I think there's a couple of things that I would add to this. Is I remember, I don't know if this is, I think this is relevant. I remember speaking, my grandma, who bless her heart, um, who obviously lives in Yeovil, is she goes church when she can, and I was like, why, why are you? I was just curious. There was recent conversation, and and this is a sad conversation in some respects if you don't have your own like drive. And I guess like that's an age thing as well. And again, I don't mean anything against my grandma saying she doesn't have any drive, because she has had drive for her life. Obviously she's old now, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was like, why is it you go to church? Why do you believe in God? What is it about that that like intrigues you and keeps you going back? And she was like, well, if I didn't believe in God, then what is there to believe in?
Yeah.
And I was like, in my head before that, I was like a little bit piss takey about the church thing, as you just said,
Yeah.
because obviously you can kind of get away with it, can't you, when it's family and they know you and you
Oh,
can have a
facts.
little
It's
laugh
jokes.
about it. And then I was like, okay, like maybe let's think of this as more of an empathetic thing now than this poor woman, like not poor woman, like she's amazing, but I was like, this lady wants something to believe in life. And that, I think that
Exactly.
goes to show the potential negative impact of the lifestyle, like and I mean this like in a really deep way, the life that we're given, so much of it is controlled for you, like the
Facts.
rules that are made, like how like yeah, you can choose what's in your house, but you're going to get a house, and that kind of self created life that almost everybody kind of gets to some way or another.
It's structured for you.
Yeah, all structured.
Yeah.
But actually outside of that you do need your own beliefs. And if hers is, do you know what, I'm going to go, and it may be the people at the church spending time socializing with somebody other than my granddad that makes her believe in people still, or like, but I was just
Facts.
like, do you know what, that's quite an interesting point. You've got to have something to believe in.
Yeah, facts. And that's what I've learned for sure, definitely out here. And like you said, some people are very strict about it. I've had rude people. I've had comments like some bad comments. I've had bad messages and stuff like that. But I mean, it's like 2%, 98% is good. But because sometimes I end up having conversations with people, I try to stay away from it because I don't want to dig too deep. But people, because it's such a common thing here, people will ask me like, "What's your religion?" And then when I tell them I don't have a religion, I'm not religious, sometimes like the shock on their face is like they don't get it. They're like,
Mm.
how? Like why? But I had a conversation with a man in a village and I said, I don't have a religion. I said I feel more spiritual. I do believe there's higher powers, but I couldn't tell you for the life of me what those things are, you know? And he went on to say, well, I think the most important thing is that, you know, as long as if we have a pure heart and we're good to one another, then we don't need to show our religion. And I agreed with him. I was like, what an amazing thing to say. And the comments, man, some people are like, these people are lost. Oh, God save him. And I'm like, I'm fine. Trust me, I'm fine. Like, and it's like people just need to chill. Sometimes I'm like, I want to show my opinion as long as it's like respected. But yeah, going back to why people are so, what's the word, so dedicated to that
Great
religion
word,
is
yeah.
it gives them that comfort, that level of comfort that they're looking for, that belief system that they want to follow. It gives them a set of core values and stuff that they try to live each day by. And if it makes them happy and it makes them good to other people, then there's nothing to complain about. You know, it's when it goes to the other side, and obviously there's extremists in the world and stuff like that you can't agree with. But yeah, on the most part, I think going back to your nan, it's nice that she can go somewhere and get that sense of fulfillment from something at that stage in life, you know.
Yeah,
So
man.
I think that's beautiful, actually. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, and it was definitely one of those moments like, oh, do you know what, you have a point there.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
if it wasn't for me like having my epiphany a couple years ago with like the whole podcast and like creating this version of like me that I want to become, like I'm not sure, like if I didn't have the teachings to go and chase a version of me that I wanted, and all of this training that I've had, like
mhm,
Maybe, like, who knows, mate. I'd still be wandering around lost, wondering why I felt so overwhelmed and why life was like felt so, yeah, overwhelming. Because if you don't have a belief system to follow and you don't believe in the ones that you should, like, and I mean that again with all disrespect, all
All
disrespect, all
due
respect,
respect.
all due respect. Yeah,
Imagine.
yeah, all disrespect to you.
Just start going off.
Yeah, yeah. But without that, I think like I'd have been a very upset person still, or not all the time, but I'd have been like, why do I feel like this? But actually, it's because I've got a belief system now that I'm really happy to be following, just like
Yeah,
just like the people in Bali have, just like my grandma has, just like you have now. So what are
exactly.
your like what is your where have you found yourself? Obviously, you're not religious. You say you're spiritual. How does that work for you?
I'm spiritual in the sense that like I'm not an absolute nut. Like I don't go crazy with it. But I I very much, oh man, I don't want to sound too wishy-washy because
Nah, go on. I
sometimes
like it. I like happy clappy
there's
stuff.
certain the way that it's said, some people are a bit like, yeah, but I genuinely go off energy. A lot of the time I go off of energy. And it depends how you want to take that word. Vibes, like vibes is literally just a shortened version of vibrations. And vibrations are all around us. They're minuscule. The world is connected through vibrations. And we as people are connected through vibrations. That's why it's called a vibe. When you meet someone new and you vibe, oh, I feel that vibe. Do you know what I mean? So I very much go by that. And I don't necessarily believe that there's like a God as such, but it depends how you interpret the word God. To me, the word God can easily be changed to universe, right? And then if you take the universe, for example, it is an incredibly complex thing that none of us really have the full ability to understand. But what I do know is that how can we say that, you know, manifestation doesn't work or magic doesn't happen and stuff like that when look at where we are. I'm a tiny dot on a little island in the middle of Indonesia on planet Earth. But when you look around and go even further than that and go bigger than that, there has to be something more than just this, you know. So in that respect, I that's what I mean by like I go off of energy and I go off vibrations and I really lean into that. If I get a good vibe off of someone, I'll lean into it. I won't go away from it if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
defo.
and then on top of that, just positive vibes. That's kind of my belief system is I try to be as positive as I can as much of the time as I can with everyone and everything.
I think,
Because
yeah,
just ruin your own day otherwise. That's the way I think about it.
for sure. And interestingly, you found yourself in a state of low vibrations, mate, didn't you? And for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
So, like for those who don't know, your dad's passed away. Um,
yeah.
last
Last September.
Chris, yeah, yeah, I remember it
Last
was sort
September.
of last September. And from
Yeah.
that, mate, you went through some like experiences and found it difficult, didn't you,
Mm.
to like you'll never fully move on from something like that, I don't think. But if you put it in your own words to how it kind of moved you into a scenario when you started
Mhm.
working with me.
It's I mean, in terms of um my weight issues and things like that, that comes before I actually even went home. It just got worse when I came home. So I'd already been a bit stuck in a position of low motivation, which kind of I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't really fulfilled in life. I wasn't really enjoying myself as much. I was in Bali and people were like, your life looks amazing, but like a good 50% of the time I was unhappy or unsure of what I was even doing. And I would fill that void by eating junk. And that made me feel better for 10 minutes. And then I'd feel like crap for the rest of the night. But I would still do it again the next day and the next day and the next day. And then fast forward to July last year, I had a phone call. I woke up and my brother had tried calling me. It was like 3 in the morning. Um, and I was like, okay, I mean, my brother never tries to call me anyway because he's always too busy. No disrespect to him. I mean, he's just busy all the time. So
Yeah,
we have to plan it. So the fact that he'd called me at like stupid o'clock in the morning, I was like, and I knew something was wrong. I'd actually seen a palm reader like months before, and she really pushed on the point that I had to keep checking in with my dad, and my dad's health and stuff. And it wasn't too long after he'd been told he had diabetes. But yeah, my brother, I basically called my brother, and he was like, you have to come home ASAP. And I was like, it's dad, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And that's he said it's cancer, and it's like it's stage 4. And I was like, right. Okay. It was kind of like it was such a huge bomb just being dropped on top of you after, like, I was already kind of not overly fulfilled in life, already not quite happy, and to have that then thrown on top of you was just a bit like, okay. But I was like, I want to make this isn't about me. I need to get home and be there for my dad, for my mum, for nephews, nieces, my brother, my sister, whatever anyone needs. I felt like, I don't know why, I felt like I needed to take on that responsibility to go home and just try and ease everything a little bit. So
Take a
yeah,
bit
I
of the
went home and
burden type thing.
yeah, man, because I mean, um, obviously I was out here for a long time. I got stuck out here during the pandemic for a very long time, with certain issues with being able to get out, in and out and go home and being able to come back because I got the dog here. So I didn't go home throughout the whole pandemic. So I hadn't seen anyone. Obviously, we video called. But yeah, I was like, okay, I'll be home as soon as possible. And yeah, I got rid of the house, and that was it. I was on a flight home. And that whole period was honestly the hardest thing. Obviously, the hardest thing I've ever had to go through, to see someone who's such a strong figure in your life. He was, he's Manchester Stockport. I've seen the soft side of him, but most of the time he was quite a tough exterior, but super soft on the inside. And to then go home and see someone that was in a state where it's just like, oh wow, that's shocking. My dad was 66, so it was shocking. I was like, wow, okay, 66. And then I mean, I don't want to go obviously into too much detail on the sickness and things like that, but my dad was sick for a couple of months, and then yeah, he passed away in September. But I ate crap. I tried to eat healthy, but I just had to keep filling myself back up with happiness with crisps and whatever else. And even when I first came back to Bali, I still continued to do it. But I learned a lot through that period. I learned a lot that we can't take things for granted. I'm 33, just turned 34, and I was like, wow, if God forbid the same thing happens to me as it did to my dad, I'm 50% the way through. So instead of thinking of it, because I know that sounds negative, instead of thinking it of like, oh man, I'm halfway through. I'm thinking it of more as like, if I'm halfway through, I'm gonna make sure that this second half is the best fucking half in the world. And in order to be able to do that, I have to change this up here. I have to change my mindset, the way I talk about myself, what I think about myself, and how much I actually respect myself. Because for the last 3, 4 years, I had not respected my body enough at all. I never knew exactly what was going in, and I knew I wasn't exercising. So I could never ask the question of, why am I overweight and why am I unhappy? Why do I feel like crap? Why do I feel sluggish? I want to live a long life. I don't want to climb volcanoes. I want to hike. And there's no way I could do that in that shape. And that's when I was like, I need to talk to Harry. I got to talk to Harry. We got to sort this out.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that leads us like nicely back to where we were before. Obviously, we spoke about your dad, and mate, I think what you did for your family, and I mean, I think it I think every son in that situation, we kind of go into look after mode, don't you?
Massively.
and
Yeah.
and I think
Huge.
that that's what happened. And obviously, with you like being such a caring guy, like happy guy, you wanted to take the load. And I used the word burden a minute ago, and I was like, I shouldn't have used that word, but I think you understood what I meant. It was like
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a negative impact on
Some
the
of the
whole
weight
family, and
is
you could.
taken.
Yeah, you had to take some of the weight away off of them onto your shoulders, which is
Yeah.
not a nice thing for anybody to do. But what's interesting is you speak about vibrations. Now, I don't speak about this often, really, but it's definitely a thing. Look at your situation or look at anybody's situation when it comes to anxiety, overwhelm, fear, depression, sadness, low mood. And I'm not saying this is for everybody, because some people do have like specific conditions which can make them
Mhm.
feel certain ways. But for a large majority of modern day population, if you were to go, right, okay, what of those are you experiencing? Let's use anxiety, for example. Right. How much time are you putting focusing on that anxiety by saying that you're anxious, or giving
Mhm.
yourself a label of something that links back to that anxiety? Okay, quite often. Okay, cool. That's one low vibration thing that you're adding to. Right. What next? How often do you exercise and get out in sunlight? Oh, once a week. Okay, that's like not good
Yeah.
enough. Like, yes, that's not even 20% of your week. Okay, so that's another thing that's piling into the creation of low vibrations. What are you eating at the moment? Oh, okay, so you eat a bag of Cheetos a night. Excellent. That's 700 calories of unregistered food,
You're
unsaturated
explaining my
fats.
previous
Like,
life.
yeah. Okay. Let's put that in the low vibrations mood. All right, brilliant. What about your hydration and sleep? Well, I sleep 2 hours a night, and I actually don't drink any water, so I drink full fat Coke, and yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. So we've got 5 things here, mate, that may be creating you some low vibrations. What about resistance training? Nah, I don't like it, mate. All right, sweet. We've created a low vibration state here that
Mhm.
you are like in the middle of suffering. So what do you want to do about it? All right, let's start at the top of the list. Okay, so you need something to look forward to, mate. Okay, so let's take your attention away from the anxiety. All right, sweet. For in your example, let's put your attention on your creation, your videos. Right, sweet, done. High vibration. You're chasing goals. Sound. Next one. How often are you moving about and exercising? Oh, every day now. Brilliant. High vibration stuff. Sick. Oh, cool. That's
Yeah,
the creative a positive mood here. What about food? Well, I'm eating loads of protein, making sure I get my veggies in. Well, that's excellent. That's a big improvement from the Cheetos. Sound right, cool. Positive vibration. Number 3. Okay, water and sleep. Yeah, hydrating every day, drinking electrolytes, getting my coconut water in, and trying my best to get on top of sleep. We've not quite cracked that yet, mate, have we? But we're getting there. And
2 times a week.
yeah, that's it. Okay, cool. So we've got a fifth tick in our little box of positive vibrations, and then resistance training, mate. You enjoying that? Yeah, fucking love it now.
I'm
Boom.
loving it.
Positive
Loving it.
vibration creator. I think you can label it in so many different things. You can label it in feeling confident, feeling empowered, feeling positive vibrations, feeling vibes, feeling having a good mood. If you don't do things to support that, you're never gonna fucking get it. And I know it
No.
sounds so harsh, but it's so true.
But it needs to be said. And I needed to really, I mean, I'd heard it and I told myself a million times, but until you really believe in where you want to be, you're not going to do it. And only like you could tell me a million times, Adam, you have to go to the gym at least 3 times this week. If I didn't want to do it, I still wouldn't do it. It has to come from that person. You're here to give me the right guidance. You're here to help me when I'm falling off, which we've obviously had a few times in the earlier
You know
days.
what,
I
mate?
fell off.
Yeah, I
You
wouldn't say there was loads, but there was just a few times where I think your
yeah.
attention needed to be moved. Like I'll do the coaching, your attention was here, whereas
Mhm.
you needed your attention to be over here.
Yeah. And I just kept getting myself sidetracked. Actually, you said something interesting about the anxiety and obviously we focused a lot on my language towards myself. And um, whilst if I'm outside and I'm interacting in a social situation with new people and everything else, everything's positive. But for some reason, when everything came back to me, it was like I couldn't help but just use real negative language with myself. And I even did it, I still do it, but I now have the sense of awareness. Yesterday, I I had this anxious feeling because I was a bit overwhelmed. I had so much to do. And I kept saying to myself, I was like, oh, gee, I'm so anxious today. And I said it a few times before I clicked, and I was like, no, you're not. You're a little bit worried, but we can fix this. How can you fix it? Okay, well, I'm just going to go and do 10 minutes of Wim Hof's breathing exercises. I did 10 minutes of that, led down, cleared my mind, stood up, drank my coconut water, and I was like, oh, now I'm not anxious. And I said that a few times to myself. Now I'm not anxious. Now I'm not anxious. Now I'm not anxious. Just to rewire my brain. Like, yeah, it's okay to feel anxious, but just know that you don't get stuck in that. And the more times that you reaffirm it to yourself, the anxiety gets worse because you're now worrying about being anxious.
Yeah,
Not only are you worried about whatever it is you're anxious about, you're now worrying about it's like layered. You're like, oh, now I need to get rid of the anxiety. And it's just like it becomes a big cloud, right? And you become unfocused. You don't know where to start. So for me, yeah, taking that 10 minutes of breathing and just clearing my mind and going, okay, I'm not anxious. I'm not actually anxious. I'm fine. And then you just crack on, right? So you've helped massively, actually, dude. Like you've helped massively in terms of rewiring how I speak to myself in a
I
way.
appreciate that, man. I definitely didn't want to turn this into a online testimonial, but I think it's really important for listeners to know the power of looking after yourself. I know it's like it can almost sound a bit boring, and like the idea of going like getting in nature, drinking water, sleeping well. It's not sexy, mate. Like, there's no like sexy pill that you take to be able
It
to
works.
create this vibe. Let's use the word vibe because it is a vibe.
Yeah,
It's actually like really basic, boring stuff. But when you put all of this basic, boring ingredients together, it creates something that's pretty special.
I like the way you put that. It's facts. It is facts. It is like putting ingredients into something. Yeah, this might seem shit on its own, but if I mix it with this and a few pieces of this, and I drink all of that in one go, I'm gonna feel amazing. And that's what, dude. Like I'm actually excited. You're like, do you want to do the podcast at 9 or 10? And I was like, let's do 9 because I don't want to go to the gym too late. Before I'd have been like, let's do 10 because that then gives me an excuse to not go to the gym because it'll be too late. Whereas now I'm like, no, man, let's do it early because I've still got to go. I got
Go
some
and get in the
calories to
gym.
burn, you know what I mean? And yeah, I just need to say actually, if there is anyone that's listening that is stuck in a cycle of going to the gym and then literally spending like 2 days in a week there being like, yeah, I feel accomplished, and then just not going the next week because it was very difficult to run for 10 minutes, don't be deterred. Like my first week, burning 200 calories on the treadmill was hell. Like it was horrible. And now I actually leveled up this week. My warm ups is now a 600 calorie burn on the treadmill. Every single time I hit the gym, I burn 600 calories first, every single time. Because I know that I've smashed it out. I've got that in, and then I do my resistance training. And now it's become something that I enjoy. And that's what, 4 weeks, 5 weeks really of consistently going to the gym like 5 days a week. Um, I love it. I love it. So yeah, don't be deterred, people. Just keep going, and it gets easier, and you actually do start enjoying it, whether you want to believe it or not.
I said I wasn't going to ask this. I said I wasn't going to turn it into a testimonial. But if you could say to somebody maybe who's listened to my content and been like, I'm really thinking about working with Harry, why would you say? What would you say to them? Why should they come and work with me?
You're relatable. You've got your own experience that you are happy to share, and you can literally compare on those. Oh yeah, I used to feel like that too, but this is what I did, etc. So you have the experience. You don't just talk the talk. You've already walked it, and you've shown that, and you're consistently leveling up. You're always pushing yourself. Number three, comfortable, but no bullshit. So what I mean is our conversations, our calls are always obviously comfortable, and we are friends. Like you said, we've known each other for a long time, but we park that to the side, and there's a no bullshit approach. We just kind of, if I've got this certain problem, you already know what to do. Okay, get a notepad out. This is what I want you to write down, etc., etc. So yeah, if there is anyone that's on the fence that does really, if they're stuck, like I said, in that cycle that I was in, Harry's going to help you. Like there's no doubt about it. Like in terms of mindset, really focusing on, okay, well, if you're not that physical, why is it? Is it because of what you're thinking up here, or are you just being lazy and eating the wrong things? Yeah, so there's just so many things that I wouldn't have thought of individually, that having those conversations with you has helped me become very much more aware of those things, i.e., telling myself I'm anxious, knowing that telling myself I'm anxious is not going to help my anxiety. So I've learned that. Whereas before, I'd be stuck in that same cycle of just speaking negatively about myself, etc., etc. So yeah, not a testimonial, but do it. If you're thinking
I
about
think
it, just do it.
on yeah, on that anxiety note, it's such a like I posted about it last night actually. I wrote a little like one of my mini essay posts, and it's a really funny one, anxiety, because to be spiritual with it, you are trying not to change the way that you're thinking, right? That's one way that you can get over the fact. Just acceptance, but acceptance sometimes sounds a bit, it sounds a bit wishy-washy, and nobody likes to accept that they're not
Yeah,
feeling very
but
well. Yeah.
yeah.
Like, like nobody likes that. So that's cool. I think the acceptance is the fact that we know that we can create these feelings. We like our brains can create some proper intense. Like you've only got to think about the feeling of dropping off the edge of a roller coaster, right? That's
Uh-huh.
fear, speed, and momentum all mixing into a physical and mental feeling that actually makes your stomach like
Go.
and your
Uh-huh.
heart rate rise. So we know the
Facts.
power of what anxiety can do. If you was in a Shark Tank cage with with a great white shark, and like you notice there was a bit of blood in the water, your heart rate would go because that shark's gonna get fucking
Yeah.
psyched, right? So you're a you,
Facts.
if it's me or you, your dick's gonna shrivel up and your heart's gonna go, like for sure. But that's also the power of what you can do. But man, I've had days and experiences. I think I've spoke about this before, where I've been like, oh, why am I feeling so anxious? Blah blah blah. Playing cricket, and all I can think about is I'm not playing cricket, mate. I'm just stood there, basically, trying to figure out why I'm not feeling 100%. I remember it like vividly. I remember there was like elm trees in the background. I remember the back, and I was just stood in the field thinking. I wasn't upset. I was just like, what the fuck is going on? You're supposed to be this like bubbly guy, like bubbly, happy person, but at the time I just wasn't. And it was because I kept revolving back to why am I feeling anxious? I'm feeling
Yep.
anxious. I say that like about me with the sarcastic tone in my voice because now I'm lucky enough to know what to do. And if one morning I wake up now and I'm like, all right, I don't feel 100% today. What do I need to do it? I'm like, right, journal, goals, focus. What do you want?
Yeah.
And I know that sounds so fucking simple, but it can be.
Sometimes it is.
Chuck
Yeah.
those little like you like make a cake, right? Flour, eggs, sugar. If you want chocolate cake, chocolate powder, baking powder, bang, mix it together, cake. If you want positive feelings, make goals, exercise, hydrate, sleep well, rest. I think that's about it. Mix it together, go away from anxiety.
It's fact. And I think just as humans, I think we're so guilty of doing this, of building things up in our head. And like you said, it almost sounds too good to be true that it could be that simple. But sometimes it really is. Like it doesn't have to be that difficult. And I've started saying that to myself as well. I'm like, it's not as hard as you think it is. We make things so much more difficult in our head, but then you just simplify those things one by one. And all you have to do is just tell yourself it's really not as hard as you think it is.
Yeah.
Like hitting the gym for, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not been easy as well, especially when I was chunkier at the beginning. But again, it's getting easier, but it's not as hard as I thought it was. I was like going to the gym, man. Oh, here's the anxiety. People are gonna look at me. People are gonna wonder why I'm here. Like no one cares, man. Just go to the gym. Like if anything, when I see a bigger person in the gym working out and putting in the work, I'm like, fair play, keep going. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it really is that simple. It's what's wrong with me, like you said, and how do I fix it? That we always have. We're lucky. I mean, there's places in the world where people don't have opportunities to get access to the resource and things they need. But people like us and many people like us that are listening are actually very, very lucky. I don't think we should ever take it for granted that we do have the ability to go, well, I can go and pay for a gym and I can go there and make myself feel better. And it really is, it can be that simple. Okay, I don't have to eat a bag of crisps tonight. Actually, I'm going to eat some tempeh and some veggies, chicken and veggies for you.
Chicken and
And
veg.
it is that
Yeah.
simple. It
Exactly,
is
mate.
that simple. It really is.
Mate, I can't believe we're nearly up to an hour, and it's
Wow.
been, mate, what a natural, by the way, like a natural chat and a natural guy on the camera,
I haven't waffled too much, have I?
not at all, mate. I think
That's what I was nervous about. I was
I
like,
am gonna
sometimes I'll
go.
waffle.
Oh, not at all, not at all. I am gonna go with because you're worthy of it, my man. The two finisher questions for the podcast, and the two questions are, mate. Number one, what's next for Adam Barker? And then number two, what is the greatest bit of advice you've ever been given?
Oh man, that second one's tough. Okay, number one, what's next is yeah, literally just I mean, again, this doesn't really need elaborating, but elevating on a mental, a physical, and a financial um position. So physically and mentally, that's just going to come from pushing myself to the next level now, especially as we're starting a new program. I've burnt a lot of fat. So the next goal for me in terms of physical is to actually finally start putting some muscle back on.
Ayo.
Like, I need to actually get some muscle because I'm still looking like noodles here. I'm looking like spaghetti. So I need to get some
Mate,
muscle and
less
some
less spaghetti than you were 200 days ago, that's for sure.
facts. Like you can actually see a shoulder here.
There
That's
you go.
crazy. So yeah, like I want to focus more on that because I know, and not just for like a vanity, Reason being, I mean, a little bit vanity, I guess, because it's like I want to look good, but I know that by doing that, I can look in the mirror and be like, yeah, I feel good about myself. I look well. And that then obviously interlinks with mental. So that's what's next to me is leveling up physically to support my mental, which then hopefully will keep me in good shape to continue making good content that I can hopefully monetize by the end of the year.
And the greatest bit of advice you've ever been
Like,
given is
this is difficult because I've met so many people that I've met. You know what? I met a man in a random village in a place called Banyuwangi, Jawa Timur, East Java, and it wasn't so much advice, but I was just so inspired by. Can I do that? It's a little bit cheating. I took advice from it, but he didn't physically or actually give me
yeah,
advice. But
whatever's in here, mate. This is what I like.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I still see the twinkle in his eye, man. Like this guy was 73, he worked every day. They didn't have a lot, but we sat in his house for 2 hours smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and talking about family. And he was so happy that he could give stories. So for me, in terms of advice, was to be content with what you have. Never wish or want for too much more than what you have because you'll forever be chasing it. And again, just work on those positive vibrations. Like the fact that I opened my mouth up to say hi to that guy led to the opportunity to him then invite me in, and he told me all about his family, his childhood, things that he has to do to get by and stuff. But he had this gleaming smile on his face, and I was like, this guy's cracked it. This guy's cracked it. He doesn't have a big fancy house or a big fancy car. He worked in a farm still, but look at him, like he was so content with life. So stop wanting for more and try to just be as content as you possibly can with what you have. Look around and be grateful and be like, I'm good, I'm good.
What a beautifully positive vibration to end the show on, mate. Where can people come and find you on social media if they want to come find out more about you and Core Cultures?
Core cultures,
Not
core dot
cool,
cultures,
Core.
not cool, core as in the core of an apple,
There you go,
core cultures.
my
That's where
guy.
you can find me. Almost at 30K on IG right now. Almost forgot to talk then. But yeah,
Kill,
that's been growing and we're going well.
Killing it, brother. Today has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, mate. It has been episode 112 of the 100% podcast. Me, your host, Harry Purdy. And today's guest, Mr. Core Cultures himself, Adam Barker. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please go over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and drop a 5-star review. It does go a long, long way to help on the show. And if you really enjoy the content, make sure you click the follow button, and my content will drop into your playlist every Monday and Friday. Hope you have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.